Salut la team, donc je démarre cette nouvelle vidéo avec un créateur de contenu américain, donc il s'appelle Alex Ubanks. Je reçois très souvent des messages pour me demander si un tel ou un tel est sous-produit, et justement il en fait partie. Je tiens à préciser qu'il s'agit de stéroïdes anabolisants et non de compléments alimentaires, car énormément de personnes ne savent toujours pas faire la différence. Donc ce fameux Alex est selon les dernières informations qui ont été données justement par le principal intéressé, donc Alex, qui a récemment déclaré qu'il utilisait des stéroïdes alors qu'il a toujours affirmé le contraire. Donc pourquoi Alex a-t-il enfin avoué qu'il utilisait des stéroïdes anabolisants? Donc la raison principale, c'est qu'il veut désormais être honnête avec sa communauté et il précise qu'il est suivi et encadré afin de faire les choses correctement, ce qui englobe les dosages, les prises de sang et tout le reste sans aller justement trop dans les détails. Donc Alex a déclaré être sur TRT, donc est-ce la vérité ou un mensonge de plus, juste pour ne pas dire quels sont les réels dosages et les produits utilisés depuis quelques temps. D'ailleurs j'ai remarqué que de dire je suis sur TRT c'était comme une mode, que ce n'était rien justement de grave alors qu'au contraire il n'y a rien de normal et certains se cachent derrière cette fameuse TRT justement pour n'avouer qu'à moitié ou pas du tout le fait de se charger. D'ailleurs je vous ai préparé une vidéo sur la TRT que je sortirai très prochainement. Alex explique également pourquoi il s'est tourné vers cette fameuse TRT. Il mentionne son désir d'augmenter sa masse musculaire maigre tout en maintenant un faible pourcentage de graisse corporelle, car Alex révèle qu'il n'a pas suivi ses macros depuis plus d'un an et attribue une grande partie de son physique à sa génétique. Il explique également les changements que cela a apporté à son physique et à son bien-être général. Alex a rencontré et rencontre des difficultés personnelles, y compris des problèmes de santé mentale à cause des réseaux sociaux, où il est vivement critiqué. Je pense qu'avec cette déclaration, les choses ne vont pas s'arranger. Il avoue également avoir eu une période particulièrement sombre où il a eu justement des pensées suicidaires. Alex explique également que par la suite, il n'utilisera aucun autre produit ni d'augmentation des dosages de sa TRT. Mais bon, je suis un peu sceptique là-dessus, car que l'on soit naturel ou non, on veut toujours plus de masse musculaire. Je trouve ça inquiétant que de plus en plus de jeunes pense ou même commence à utiliser des produits au bout d'une semaine d'entraînement sans aucune connaissance en nutrition ou au niveau entraînement et n'arrive même pas à suivre une diète de base pendant un mois. Et malheureusement, je pense que ces jeunes ou même moins jeunes sont fortement influencés par des Alex ou autres et décident de suivre le même chemin au lieu de suivre des personnes plus expérimentées qui prouvent qu'avec de la discipline et du temps, on peut justement afficher un super physique. Info concernant Ramon Dino qui participe à une nouvelle compétition au Brésil ce samedi et il est pratiquement sûr à 100% de remporter cette compétition car il sera le seul compétiteur de haut niveau sur la scène en classique physique et d'après les images, son physique semble beaucoup plus rempli avec une condition très poussée. Il y aura également la division 212 et là le niveau sera beaucoup plus élevé avec justement pas mal d'athlètes qui ont participé à Monsieur Olympia justement le week-end dernier et pour finir, malheureusement, il n'y aura pas de catégorie Men's Open. Comme après chaque grande compétition, Tyler Magnon, le vice-président de la FBB Pro League, mais également juge, explique ses choix par rapport au top 2, mais également pour le reste des compétiteurs lors de Monsieur Olympia 2024, Hadi Choopan versus Samson Dauda. Donc je pense qu'on peut lui faire confiance à 100% par rapport à ses explications, mais également ses choix vu son expérience. Et on ne peut pas justement être mieux placé qu'un juge qui a la meilleure place, justement, donc la meilleure des positions pour regarder un athlète sous toutes les coutures. Donc la première pose double bicep de face. Donc je vous laisse écouter et après je vais intervenir.
Samson and Hadi both have very strong front double bicep poses. For me, Samson's front double has improved show to show and year over year. His arms have come up considerably, both the biceps and the triceps. His whole inner arm is very good now in my opinion. As you see, he has nice V taper going into a nice small waist. His waist control and ab control was very good at this show. Then you move into the lower body and Samson obviously has some of the best legs and the best quads in the open division. Very good overall balance with this pose. The one thing I always said about Samson in this pose is yes, could his lats, be a little bit more dramatic? Could you have a little bit more of a taper? Yes, but I think that's increased dramatically. Now for Hadi also has a very good front double bicep, solid arms into a very pronounced V taper into a nice small waist. And then Hadi always has great legs from the front that are very conditioned. However, for me at this show, I feel like his legs overall, not just in this pose, but overall, were a little bit downsized. And even though the top to bottom is very good, I still think being downsized throws off that perfect balance just a little bit for him. And for that reason, even though Hadi's taper is a little bit more dramatic, I think the overall balance of the pose all the body parts flowing together. For me, I give it to Samson to make it.
Donc tout à fait d'accord avec Tyler sur le fait que Samson affiche un très bon V-Typer. Ses cuisses font partie des meilleures de la catégorie. Ses bras ont gagné du volume par rapport à la saison dernière, mais Samson doit encore gagner justement de l'épaisseur et de la largeur au niveau de son dos sur cette pose de face, même si c'est beaucoup mieux que la saison dernière. Hadi lui a perdu en volume au niveau des cuisses, chose que je n'avais pas remarqué sur mon écran. D'ailleurs, je n'avais pas comparé son physique à celui justement de l'Arnold classique, même si j'ai déjà évoqué qu'une des cuisses était plus grosse que l'autre. Donc grâce à son volume et ses rondeurs, sa ligne, son équilibre, Samson remporte cette pose et on enchaîne justement avec la deuxième pose, donc dorsaux de face.
Next up is the front lat spread pose. For me, this is Hadi's weakest pose. As you see here, his waist obviously looks wider in this pose compared to his front double bicep pose. You can see he still needs more thickness to the chest. Obviously, he has detailed chest, but he needs more thickness to the chest. And the overall roundness to his outer arms and shoulders is very good. But when you compare it to someone like Samson, you see the difference here. Again, with the legs, good condition quads from the front, but a little bit downsized for me. Now you go to Samson. Samson has very, very round and thick and full outer arms and shoulders. His chest is extremely thick. You see striation and detail in his chest. This pose, in the past couple of shows, you could see he was having a little problem with his midsection. It would be a little bit distended. Here, both Friday and Saturday, it was not at all. The way he hits this pose, very, very dramatic V-taper. He really gets his lats out very well here. And again, you go down into the lower body. The quads are crazy full. We saw clear separation this time. The balance from the top to bottom makes this one of his strongest poses, in my opinion. So, obviously, being one of Hadi's weaker poses to Samson's arguably strongest, I think this was a clear shot for Samson to make.
Donc, gros point fort, épaule-bras, beaucoup plus de volume pour Samson. Niveau poitrine, habituellement, Hadi est plus rempli, tout comme ses cuisses. Mais je pense que soit la recharge s'est mal passée ou que Hadi a trop tiré sur la condition. Car sur les derniers jours, Hadi a effectué pas mal de cardio. Et en regardant cette vidéo en haute définition que je n'avais pas au moment, on voit justement pas mal de choses. Donc la différence est visible également en termes d'épaisseur. Le bas du ventre légèrement gonflé pour Samson, ce qui n'est pas le cas pour Hadi. Donc encore une fois, Samson remporte cette pose, mais plus facilement que sur le double bicep de face. On enchaîne avec la troisième pose, donc biceps cage.
So when we look at Hadi, again, one of his weaknesses, I would say, if he has one, is he needed more size to his legs from the side. Even at his best, which in my opinion was the Arnold Classic this year, the Arnold Classic US, you could still see he could still use a little bit more of that thickness to the side leg. So here the legs were down a little bit, and even really his overall conditioning, which is Hadi's trademark, is the striations through his chest and obviously the very, very detailed midsection. For me, we saw that Hadi's chest was not as detailed this time around, both on Friday and on Saturday. He just was lacking that trademark skinless striation chest, and he needs that because his chest is on the flatter side. Now, again, shoulders and arms were solid. The whole pose is still a very solid pose, but he was going up against an all-time best Samson. It's not the front lat spread, it's the side chest for Samson's strongest pose. Arms and shoulders, very full, very big, very round. Chest, extremely full. Also seeing detail and striation through it. Midsection, flat and in check. Side leg, very dramatic. Quad to hamstring balance. Hamstring drop, we see the lines in it, we see the separation. This pose shows off the overall muscularity of Samson and really is a pose where I think you see the massive size difference between these two competitors. So for me, another clear pose for Samson to make this 3 poses to 0.
On commence avec la partie inférieure, donc plus d'épaisseur pour Samson et c'est clairement visible. Le haut du corps, encore une fois, beaucoup plus de volume. Chez Samson, bras, épaules, poitrine, c'est beaucoup plus rempli. Et si Samson réussit à ajouter de l'épaisseur, donc plus d'ischio, à ses cuisses sur cette pose de profil, il sera pratiquement imbattable. Donc encore une pose supplémentaire pour Samson. Donc ensuite, on enchaîne avec la pose suivante, donc le double biceps de dos.
Back double bicep pose. And surprisingly, Samson brought this pose up a lot. You see from the back, he has crazy hamstrings. They were separated, they were detailed. Samson's probably someone that's never going to get crazy separated glutes, but you still see the condition that he was in, even with the glutes here. The back of his arms and shoulders improved a lot. We see the bicep peak. We see all the detail and separation in his arms. His shoulders are the best they ever looked. moving into, which was once his weakest body part, his back, he improved the taper and dramatically improved the depth and thickness of his back. So again, top to bottom balance, very, very good for him. Now here for Hadi, I think this is where we saw that it wasn't Hadi in his normal self, because normally his back double bicep is very strong. It was probably his most improved pose from last year's Olympia to the Arnold. So it was a little bit surprising to see that from the back here, we didn't see the same as we saw in Samson, the roundness and the separation and the fullness with the shoulders and the arms. And then the back itself, he was actually a little bit soft. So we didn't see that separated, grainy, dense, hard look, which he's always harder from the front than he is from the back. But this time we can notice a softness in this back double bicep pose. Go down into the lower body. Obviously, he was in shape, but his leg width and his hamstring detail definitely could have been better. We've seen it better before, and this was a pose where we saw that Hadi, I don't think, was at 100% of his best. So very surprisingly to me, I ended up giving this pose to Samson, 4 poses to 0.
Donc vous l'avez tous entendu comme moi, Hadi est loin d'être à son meilleur niveau. Ici il est beaucoup moins complet qu'Arnold classique. Il manquait de conditions de séparation fessier, ischio, un bas du dos beaucoup moins découpé. Et je pense qu'avec la condition de l'Arnold classique, Hadi aurait remporté le titre. Mais comme je dis toujours, c'est le jour J qu'il faut être prêt. Samson était encore une fois meilleur, et même si vous êtes fan justement du physique de Hadi, on ne peut pas nier que sur ces images, Samson est au-dessus. Meilleur sur tous les points, surtout au niveau de la condition. Regardez la découpe de ses ischios, la peau qui est plus fine sur ses fessiers, ses cuisses sont plus épaisses et plus larges, les épaules de Samson sont plus détaillées, on voit clairement justement les 3 faisceaux, ce qui n'est pas le cas de Hadi, et je n'ai pas besoin justement d'en dire plus. Donc on enchaîne avec la pose dorso de dos.
Lat spread pose. So the back lat spread is one of Hadi's strongest poses. Even though his back looked softer than normal in his back double bicep, the amount of thickness that he really carries in his back shines through even when he's not at his best in this pose. Very, very wide lats, very thick. We still saw the detail in the lines in the back here. Again, the lower body has been better, but it was in shape. We could see the hamstrings. The leg width was solid. I think this was one of Hadi's strongest poses on the day. Now for Samson, again, lower body is in, very big, separated, look great. The back itself actually improved a lot. I thought he was very comparable with not only Hadi, but also Derek as well in this pose. Even when he was hitting this pose, to me, I still feel like he could pull those lats out just a little bit more. It's the best he ever hit the pose. It's the best his back ever looked, but it still feels like there's something more there, that he could give himself more of that width in that illusion. But as you can see, we saw the separation and we see the thickness and the depth to his back. This pose has improved tremendously for him, but with how strong it still was for Hadi, I gave this pose to Hadi to make it 4.
Enfin, une pose en faveur de Hadi grâce à plus de largeur au niveau du dos, mais pour moi, pas plus de détails, même si l'angle et la lumière jouent un rôle justement sur ces images. Ensuite, on enchaîne avec la pose triceps latéral.
So Samson in the side tricep pose, I think, was just doing himself a little bit of a disservice with his leg placement. He has crazy legs from the side. You want to show that size with the same placement that he has in the side chest. When you place your legs this way, you really take away that hamstring and the hamstring drop when you have it the way he does. Now, I don't know the reason, but I would think the reason he did this is because flexibility-wise, it was really hard for him to keep his upper body upright before, to really be able to extend the tricep and also keep his midsection flat, and we saw the abs. So upper body wise, I thought his positioning was great for this pose, but lower body wise, it was not. Then also, obviously we posed these guys a lot of times, and he wasn't even always able to get into this pose the best way possible. Sometimes his upper body still wasn't upright. He was still leaning a little bit forward. And really when he was doing that, lose detail, lose size, lose fullness. Now for Hadi, the side tricep is always a very strong pose for Hadi. Why? Because we see all the detail in his midsection. His chest is still striated, not as much as normal, but we still see the detail there. The side leg shows off the conditioning. And for him, it's still very balanced upper and lower body here. I think because of the detail that was shown in this pose, Samson kind of taking away some of the detail and fullness, which would be his advantage here, I gave this pose to Hadi to make it.
Une seconde pose pour Hadi, et là, pas de discussion possible. Des séparations, une qualité, une condition au-dessus de Samson, haut et bas du corps. Regardez la sangle abdominale de Hadi, la peau est collée, une belle épaisseur, énormément de détails. Au niveau des cuisses, c'est la même chose. Et comme le dit Tyler, Samson n'est pas justement à l'aise sur cette pose. Il ne se met pas en valeur. Donc Samson va devoir travailler car il possède l'épaisseur pour être justement beaucoup plus impressionnant sur cette pose. Ensuite, on enchaîne avec la dernière pose. Donc l'avant-dernière pose, abdos-cuisses.
Is the abdominal and thigh pose. Now, Samson looked great this year in his ab and thigh. Again, like I said, he was having some trouble controlling the midsection at previous shows. Here he was not. The midsection was dialed in. The abs were clear. The lines were deep. He has great quads. Overall, he has very nice V-taper flowing into that nice tight waist here. So from the top of his hands all the way down, very balanced, very strong overall pose. However, he's going against Hadi, whose ab and thigh pose is, the best in the IFBB Pro League. Hadi's still very strong. All the detail through his midsection. Great taper. Quads are still conditioned. They're still there. For this pose, for me, Hadi still has a nice overall balance because in this pose, you're not expanding the lats all the way out, right? So it doesn't really look like any imbalance. Still just such a super strong pose for him that even though Samson improved this pose tremendously, you can still see a little bit of the size difference for him as well. I give this pose to Hadi to make it 4 poses to 3.
Donc là, pour moi, Samson craque totalement, il tente le vacuum, mais ce n'est pas réussi. Hadi, lui, est toujours justement super sur cette pose et je pense qu'il est justement le meilleur de la catégorie avec très certainement Andrew Jacked. Mais sur ce Monsieur Olympia, c'est Hadi le meilleur et nous sommes justement à 4 pour Samson et 3 pour Hadi. Et on finit avec la dernière pose, donc la pose du plus musclé.
Would be, your favorite most muscular pose. Both hitting basically the same pose, except Hadi hits his most muscular with his knuckles together. Samson grabs the wrist. Now, again, here, I think it was a pose that surprised me because normally Hadi is very, very tough to beat in this pose because of the detail through his chest, because of the detail in the midsection. Basically a lot of his strengths are on display in this pose. The way he hits it, he's still able to be super wide as well from shoulder to shoulder and have that muscularity displaying in the outer arms, the shoulders. But Samson finally nailed his conditioning. Was he the hardest guy on stage? No. But again, the chest is bursting full. We're still seeing striations. The size and the roundness of the shoulders and the arms. We see the detail and still the separation to his abs. Plus, with his lower body and being as big and separated as it was. It's the most muscular pose for a reason, and this displayed how big Samson truly was at this show. You see the size difference between both of these guys. For me, even with Hadi having a little bit extra detail, Samson had much more size and still good detail. Made me give Samson this pose 5 poses to 3.
Donc là, c'est une affaire de goût car personnellement, je donne la pose à Hadi et non à Samson. Il manque de qualité, de dureté, sangle abdominale qui manque également de détails. Vous l'avez compris, donc pose pour Samson grâce à son volume global. Ses muscles terrain ont donc un volume supérieur. Pour finir, je vous laisse avec les explications de Tyler Magnon au sujet de Derek Lunsford.
Now, in third place, we had our reigning Mr. Olympia, Derek. Some comments for me about Derek would be that it looks like his upper body definitely got bigger and it looks like he lost some of his leg size, even from last year. So if you would look at comparison pictures of Derek's legs from last year to this year, I think you would see that some of the quads, I think, just got dieted away. His side leg was not nearly as big and as impressive as it was last year. And even from the back where his hamstrings and his conditioning is really shining through, that leg width wasn't quite the same as it was the year prior. I think that caused a pretty big imbalance between his upper and his lower body. And when we're looking at him compared to the top two, I think that kind of put him out of the discussion. His upper body, he made improvements in certain areas. You could see a little bit more detail and fullness to the chest. I think, the arms and the shoulders as well. Obviously, his back got even better, I think, than it was the prior year. But the back double bicep, he posed it perfectly. The back lat spread, he has a very hard time of keeping that open, when we're posing them a lot. And in some of the shots, I'm sure, there's some pictures, there's videos. In some of the shots you're seeing, he's not even getting it out fully. When he hits it right, he still has the best back lat spread on stage. But when it's not hit right, Hadi's and even Samson's were looking better than him on this day. Another thing Derek really needs to work on is more separation and more detail to the midsection. I also think he was having a little bit of trouble controlling his midsection.
Donc voilà, c'est tout pour cette vidéo. Donc comme d'habitude, je compte sur vous pour faire péter les pouces bleus, ça fait plaisir. Vous pensez également à vous abonner pour ne rater aucune de mes prochaines vidéos. Et je vous dis à bientôt. Salut!